Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning. We will be kicking off this incident response day of webinars with David Cannings, the director from PwC, who will be giving us an update on CREST examinations. David's also a CREST assessor. I will let him introduce himself when I hand over to him in a second. Just so you are aware, if you haven't been on before, you can ask questions at the end of this presentation. Please feel free to do so. You've got David here. So there is a question pane that you can type your questions into, and we will get them asked of David, as many as we can in the time frame that we have. So without any further ado, I will hand over to David. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning and welcome to a CREST Day of webinars. There's some really great ones coming up later. I have the privilege of being first at 9 in the morning, so thank you everybody who has joined. We're just going to talk for around 10 to 15 minutes about the current state of CREST IR exams. Obviously, they're really crucial for individuals in industry, and they're really crucial for some of the schemes as well, including the CREST CSIR scheme, but also some of the UK-focused schemes and perhaps in the future abroad as well. I'm going to give you a brief update, talk a little bit about some of the work that's happened this year, and then just a look forward to what's happening next and where we'll be going with them. So as Debbie said, she's stolen my thunder, but I'm going to move on to the next slide. Who am I? I'm David Cannings. I currently work at PwC, but I've been involved with CREST for a very long time now, for around 10 years. For my sins, I was involved when the incident response exams were first created around 10 years ago now. Why am I talking to you this morning? I'm a member of the IR subcommittee. So there's a small number of us that have put ourselves forward to effectively push forward what CREST does in incident response. My specific focus with one other is on exams, so is on the kind of personal qualifications that CREST offers for individuals. I'm also an assessor for the threat intel team, for the threat intel exams, that CREST offers as well. So I've got a little bit of experience. And it's always great to start with a fun fact. So my fun fact for this morning is I once had dinner with this lady here, and I would normally offer to talk to you afterwards if you want to hear the full story, but we can't do that easily. But do ask questions, as Debbie said, in the question pane in GoToWebinar, and we'll try to get to those at the end. So where are we now? Well, CREST these exams have existed for a number of years now. They've been refreshed, they've been reviewed a few times, but effectively what you see on the screen is the current state of the exams in the incident response world. At practitioner level, and this is kind of someone who's at the entry level of their career, maybe a sort of up to a year's experience. We have the CPIA, the CREST Practitioner Incident Analyst. And then at registered level, and again, typically this would be kind of 3 years experience. There's no obviously hard sort of date on it, but that's roughly what you'd expect someone to have the skills and experience to take this exam at the registered level. And then at the certified level, and again, this is around 5 years of continuous experience focusing on this thing on a full-time basis. We have 3 technical exams and 1 management exam. And there's absolutely nothing in terms of sort of order or the fact that the CCIM is sitting on top of the others. Is actually more about the fact that I could not fit it all on the screen. But yeah, the majority of the current exams have a very technical focus. And then at the sort of other side, we have the CREST Certified Incident Manager, which is more about how you manage a team and manage a project and manage a client through that kind of crisis situation. So this is the current state. As I said, CREST looks at these exams every 3 years. They will get almost a full rewrite to make sure that they're up to date, to make sure the technical information is correct and is representative of the sort of the sort of industry trends. They're looked at once every 18 months as well, and the assessing team looks at things like multiple choice questions. Are lots of people getting them wrong? Are things poorly worded? How has the industry moved on? So there's a good kind of split of in terms of updates. There's a good split of making sure they're good exams, but also making sure they're technically relevant. These exams haven't been looked at now for a little while, and it is effectively the point where they're due a refresh. So everything I'm going to talk about after this, some of the external influences that have led CREST to look at these, is really important. But actually, these exams are due a refresh anyway. So recent work. Recently, the National Cybersecurity Centre sponsored some very important work actually looking at what they call Tier 2. And this is support for small to medium enterprises. So if you're a large company, if you're operating in the critical national infrastructure, if you're a government department and you have an incident, NCSC has a scheme, the Certified Incident Response or CIR scheme, that's now Tier 1. And obviously there are a pool of companies that can help to respond and can help through those sorts of incidents. The NCSC, and I think wider industry recognise, though, there are lots of companies, whether they're small to medium enterprise, whether they're just companies that are outside of the critical national infrastructure or networks of national significance, which are actually really important. And stuff that we've obviously seen, ransomware has not gone away yet, despite everyone's best efforts. There are a lot of things that we can do to support them, but they'll be very different. The skills and experience needed are broadly the same, but maybe the approach and the types of people that would need to be involved, there's some sort of nuance on that because it's the sort of a smaller enterprise. Obviously, having said that, the types of incident they face aren't necessarily smaller. A devastating ransomware attack is obviously a problem, whatever size organization you are. But I think just being cognizant of the fact that they don't necessarily have the resources to bring in a very large IR firm and spend a lot of money on an incident response program. CREST also held some workshops this time last year around career pathways. So it's really important for us that we have a credible career pathway from someone joining the industry. So maybe straight out of university, what should they be aiming at, through to actually someone with that 5 to 7 years experience that we talked about earlier. What are the things that they will be doing? Where will they be in their career? Where are some of the sort of points that they may choose to focus? And how do the CREST exams effectively cater for them? And I think one of the key themes that came out of both the the CREST Career Pathway workshops and the NCSC project was there are distinct roles in an incident response team. So I think everyone recognised it's more than just technical. So it's not just having people that can do a great job of forensics. It's not just people who can do a great job of network or malware reverse engineering. It's actually people who can do a great job of representing that in business language to a board. And I'll come on to a little bit about that in a few minutes. It's about people that can support a client through a crisis situation effectively. And there are other ongoing changes as well that aren't necessarily captured in the current examinations. For example, how do we effectively conduct remediation after a big breach, after an attack, or even after a red team where the outcome is not favourable for the organisation? And any of you that work for firms offer red teaming services will recognise that's not an uncommon experience, unfortunately. And those companies will come to organisations like ours for technical expertise, for project management, to effectively help them, to handhold them through that process of, I've had a really bad incident, they've got domain admin and my network's hosed, actually talk to me about how you can help me to rebuild and recover and move forward from that and ultimately improve my security. And that isn't really covered at the moment. There's a few things in the CCIM exam maybe, but obviously there's a lot more to do, I think, in making sure that we have a well-rounded set of exams and a well-rounded set of qualifications for individuals to aim for. So just a quick thing, I'm just going to show you two quick diagrams from the Tier 2 work. So this is the work that NCSC sponsored. These aren't a kind of CREST position. This was some really interesting kind of think piece that came out of it. These aren't indicative of what we're going to do next. I'll come on to what CREST will be doing next in a minute. But I think they are really valuable in terms of just drawing out some of the changes in how we need to move forward. So at the minute we have this kind of incident analyst and incident manager exam already in CREST, and they are people that would typically be working with like a head of IT or a head of cybersecurity. You might be working with a SOC lead to manage an incident, and these individuals would typically be doing very technical work. They'd be taking some technical data on one side, they'd be using their skills and experience, the specialist knowledge that they've got, and at the other end they'd be spitting out some sort of very technical information. Where the Tier 2 paper sort of pulled that in a bit more detail was the concept of what was called an engagement manager, and the organisation I work for calls them crisis managers, effectively individuals that can coordinate with the business, so typically the board or an exec level audience, and take the very technical output and turn that into a business thing and get business decisions that help to drive forward the technical incident response. I must say at this point, I don't envision particularly at the minute that we're going to suggest there is a CREST exam for engagement management. But if we look on the next slide, which is around a typical career pathway, and this is not the CREST work, this is from the NCSE Tier 2 work. But someone who comes in as a cyber analyst graduate at the bottom left might do their CPIA. They might get another year or two of incident response experience and become an incident analyst. They might get another 2 years regular experience and choose a specialism and become a specialist incident analyst. And at the minute, we obviously have host network and malware in the current certifications. Someone who comes in as a sort of cyber manager might also do a CPIA, but then go on to become more of a sort of incident management role. They may come into the discipline with a background of cybersecurity knowledge. They may already understand some of the other sort of cybersecurity specialisms, whether it's a kind of core advisory, cyber advisory focus or not. But at the top, they drew out this idea of a business continuity / disaster recovery manager, where you may come in with business level disaster and resilience experience. You may be the kind of person that helps your organization decide what happens when there's a fire or a flood or when a global pandemic hits, and you are, for the duration of an incident, parachuted into effectively managing that incident from a crisis perspective and helping to make sure the organization is making the right decisions. And there was some recognition that we need to at least have something and some way of helping those individuals to cross-train into cyber and to understand what their role would be in cybersecurity if there were an incident. And it's worth noting, again, at this point, we don't necessarily imagine we're going to create any exams for this right now, but it is worth having in mind that a well-rounded team and a well-rounded consultancy team from an organisation like all of us on the call today probably will need to have people that can push in that direction. Even if their primary focus is technical, we would expect them to be managing a board and to be managing an incident. So that's the Tier 2 piece. And again, I think it's an interesting external view on what a career pathway should look like. It was produced for the NCSE by CREST to their kind of aligned to what they asked for. And I think it's really valuable in shaping how we move forward. And so just to look at that then, what is next? And this is the exciting bit, because this is where we actually get to do something and make a tangible difference. The current exams will be refreshed. They're due it, and obviously with all these sort of external factors, it's really important that we do it. No decisions have been made yet, so some of the things I mentioned as ideas are not sort of CREST policy yet, but they are ideas that we'll be putting forward to the CREST exec. But the principles that we are going forward with are on the screen at the minute. So the exams need to be credible. We need to have a set of exams which are up to date. They're technically relevant. They cover the kinds of things that we would expect people to have in terms of skills and experience. And they're a kind of exam that you look at and you think, right, okay, if someone's got the CREST Certified Incident Manager exam, I know they're the kind of person I want in my organization, whether you're a consultancy, whether you're a sort of a client organization from our perspective. And they're the kind of person I want managing my incident. Or great, they've got a sort of incident analyst exam. I know they understand well-rounded modern things about incident response. There needs to be a career pathway. We've talked a lot about this, so I won't sort of labour on it, but they do need to align to a pathway that gives people some idea of what their progression will be like from leaving university or from retraining into cyber, or coming from a different discipline and effectively using their skills to support the sort of cyber angle inside a firm. And we want to make sure they have a route for progression. They've got something they can look at, and ideally people they can look at as well. So I want to be just like Rob, who's a CCIM. I want to be him in 5 years and give them something to aim for. International focus. This is a really important one. When CREST started many years ago now, CREST was exclusively UK focused. There are questions in some of our exams which are exclusively UK focused as well, which is a good reflection of where we've come from. For example, questions about the Computer Misuse Act, which is UK only legislation, or questions about certs, as in emergency response teams, cyber emergency response teams. What is the name of the kind of UK cert? Well, again, that isn't particularly relevant if you're taking the exam in Japan, and you can't really expect someone that's sitting in Japan to understand about that. So we want to make sure that where possible, we're testing candidates' skills and experience, and we make sure they have the knowledge, but it shouldn't be tied to one particular geography. And that's a really interesting point next as well, international mobility. So we want to make sure the exams can be taken anywhere as well. I'll quickly flash up the next slide. At the moment, the exams in blue, so that's at the bottom, the practitioner, and at the top, the CCIM, can both be taken fully at Pearson VUE centres. So you can go to many Pearson VUE centres worldwide. It's not all of them, but it is a lot of geographies that we would want to reach. And you can take a CPIA or CCIM exam. It will be marked remotely, obviously. Obviously, multiple choice exams can be marked automatically, but some of the other portions will be marked by an assessor in the UK. But it doesn't matter where you are. You can take that exam, you can get that accreditation, and this really shows out in the statistics. For example, we don't give out exact numbers of how many people have taken it, but I can tell you that over 100 people have taken CPIA, and from over 12 different regions as well, if I remember rightly, from 12 different countries. So that's a really good indication of demand for these exams. With the CCIM, a good number of people have taken it, but it has only ever been taken in the UK and one or two other regions. So there's definitely work to be done in terms of making sure there's appetite. And that does come back to an important point. CREST will spend time and effort and ultimately money, and that's members' money, refreshing these exams. We want to make sure they're relevant and people take them so that ultimately they pay for themselves. They don't have to make a profit, but they do have to pay for themselves in terms of the effort that goes in and the number of people that take them. Our aim is that whatever happens with the registered and certified level exams, we should be able to take those anywhere in the world at a Pearson VUE centre where you can take CREST exams. And that will mean, I'm sure, to preempt the question, that will mean there will need to be some technical testing, and there are plans afoot for that. Some of the pen test exams will be launching in a very similar way. So there is a credible plan for that, but it is yet to be worked through. If I skip back, and the last one is just inclusivity. So recognising that I think for the last 10 years we've had a very rigid career pathway, which is really technical people. They come in with a technical degree, they do some technical stuff, they learn all about disk forensics and malware analysis and network analysis, and then eventually they sort of retrain to be a CCIM, maybe because they've taken on a team lead role. We want to make sure that that's inclusive of wherever people start in their career, and also whatever people's focus is in a team, to make sure that it is effectively capturing the best of the skills that we have available to effectively solve our clients' problems. In terms of what we will do, again, as I said, no decisions have been made. We are putting forward an options paper to the exec in a few weeks' time. Some of the ideas include ensuring that we have an incident analyst role, which is not necessarily tied to one speciality. So again, we don't give out exact numbers, but the number of people that have taken the malware reverse engineering exam is much lower than the other two, the host and the network exams. And there are many individuals that have taken both the host and the network exams just to get the kind of tick in the box for other schemes like the NCSC Tier 1. So we want to make sure actually that any individual that is an incident analyst is well-rounded, that they are tested on areas of their expertise, but also tested on a well-rounded sort of set of skills and experience that we would expect someone to have in a team. It may be, for example, that we choose to combine those and have an incident analyst certificate. It may be that we have, for example, a kind of a lighter weight incident manager exam, maybe not at certified level, that other people from outside the sort of incident or the cyber industry, if that's a term, other people outside of our immediate industry can take and show that whatever their skill set is, they have some cyber knowledge as well. So there's lots of options, there's lots of things to think about, and in terms of target date, we'll be looking at starting this work early next year, so early 2022, there will be some elements of that are very easy, refreshing bits of the current exams. If we decide there's new exams or new sections or new things to test, obviously writing those takes a lot longer. And making sure that we have things like robust marking schemes so that they can be marked by any assessor in a fair and transparent way. There's some work to be done there, but we would hope to kick that off in early 2022 and effectively have some of that done throughout 2022. We'd expect to be refreshing and relaunching, whatever the correct word is, those exams. So that is a really brief kind of whistle-stop tour of where we are. Just to summarise, I think in the last year we have done a fair amount of work looking at the exams and looking at career pathway. The NCSC project was really important as an external viewpoint in encouraging us to look at that in more detail. And early next year, we will be starting the process of updating those exams in line with CREST best practice and in line with what CREST does with all of its exams, with the principles that I mentioned, including ensuring they can be taken anywhere in the world. And with that, I will stop talking and we will leave a few minutes for questions. Debbie, are there any questions that we need to answer?
That is great. Thank you very much for that, David. That was very informative, I'm sure, for everyone. And we have had a couple of questions that have come in. So the first one is with regards to your slides. Would you be happy to share your slides with the attendees?
Yeah, absolutely no problem, as long as we can share those two diagrams that I stole shamelessly from a different CREST piece of work. Yeah, absolutely. We've used these slides elsewhere. Really happy to share them, and yeah, that's fine. We'll work out the mechanics of that afterwards. Maybe email CREST. Is that the best way of doing it? And we'll go from
that. Probably is. Yes, we've got the person who's requested them, so that's fine. We can get them over to you, and if anybody else does, please feel free to send us an email through at marketing@crest-approved.org. That would be great. Also, just to let everybody know that is on the call, this session is being recorded, so it is available afterwards as well once we've edited, and David has approved and is happy with it. So it's all good from that side.
You can make me look more beautiful, Debbie, then I'll approve it.
I can't do that, David. You're far too handsome anyway. It's yeah, I don't know where I can go with that one. So with regards to questions wise, we've had a question with regards to the hard disk drive wiping policy. Now, the person's asking, does CREST still expect students to surrender company devices for wiping destruction?
Yeah, look, if you take an exam now, one of the IR exams, you will be required to turn up with a laptop. You will be required to turn up with a hard drive. And to the best of my knowledge, I'm not an on-site assessor. I'm a remote assessor for CREST. To the best of my knowledge, you will be expected to wipe that. Confidentiality and ensuring there's sort of transparency and fairness around the exams is really important. And obviously, we can't let people walk off with exam material. So that at the moment is still the policy. I think you'll be glad to know, though, that in the long term, in terms of moving these exams into Pearson VUE, we need a different delivery model. We need a model where you can sit in a Pearson VUE center effectively with a web browser. That's what you're looking at in Pearson VUE. Won't be a surprise to any of the technical people on the call, and can show skills and experience and evidence that you know what you're doing in that session. And that may mean changing how we ask some of the questions. You're expecting people to turn up with a licensed copy of X-Ways or N-Case is unfair at the earlier levels where you don't necessarily have thousands of pounds for software. So there is a shift away from the concept that you'll turn up in Slough with your company laptop, you'll surrender the hard drive and you have to rebuild it, and the kind of the days of hassle that comes with that. I can completely sympathise. We're not there yet, but I think it's where we're looking to get to. And I can't make any promises about that right now, but I think it's a good thing for us to have in mind, reducing the friction of exams as we move forward.
That's great. Thank you for that. And the person actually said, yeah, because sometimes it's a bit off-putting when they know that they've got to surrender a device, especially when they've spent a great deal of money on the device, and knowing that they're not going to get it back for some time. So brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much, David, for that one. Now, it is your opportunity to ask any questions, so please feel free to pop them into the question pane now. So one of the other questions was, you were talking about, obviously, you're going to looking at reshaping the exams for next year. Can people get involved with that sort of side of things? Can people help?
Yes, to the best of my knowledge, absolutely fine. We would love it. So with my experience of having looked at the threat intel exams a few years ago and gone through a refresh more recently with that as well, it does take time and it does take effort. It is typically paid work. This is where I mentioned that obviously it costs CREST in terms of time and money to make sure these exams are up to standard. I would expect after we've put in our paper to the exec and they've said, yes, no, here's some bits that we think are good, and we'll come to a final position in terms of what work needs to be done. We will need to do things like refreshing all of the multiple choice questions. There'll be some in there that are out of date. There'll be some in there which need new work. we'll have to look at all the short form and long form questions, and as well as writing questions, you need to write model answers, and that actually is the tricky piece sometimes. And then there'll be a need to look at the practical portions as well, and look at how do we do that. So there's a number of different things to do. There will also be the opportunity to get involved probably with some beta exams, so people taking these exams. It's an ideal thing if you're coming up to your expiry and you want to just try out something new and help CREST. It's a really great thing to do. The feedback from those and the right and the wrong answers really help us to shape those. It's very hard when you write an exam. You might have an idea that an exam is, a question is at a certain level. You might think it's, you might think it's one of the easier questions, or you might think it's one of those that's actually a bit more tricky and it's probably going to need a bit more thought. And then we obviously look at stats and we see, well, 100% of people passed that question that we thought was really hard, and actually nobody really understood what we wrote in the question that we thought was easy, because we didn't write it very well. So there's a really important point as well in the beta process, typically, where we'll test those exams out on a pool of people that we know are already at that level to give us an indication of whether the exam is targeted in the right place. So yes is the very quick answer to your question. Look out after Christmas, most likely. But if you want to get involved in the shorter term, please do drop over a note to CREST. Just let us know that you're interested. As I said, there isn't anything to be done right now until we've got the paper approved by the exec, but it is a good opportunity to think about getting involved.
That's great. Thank you very much. And we don't seem to have had any other questions come in. So I think you've covered it all, David. I think you've answered all their questions throughout your presentations. That's absolutely great. As I say, there still is an opportunity if you would like to ask any questions after the presentation. Please send anything through to marketing@crest-approved.org and we can get them over to David, and I'm sure he will take a look and we can get back to you. So I will just hand over to David to say a last few words.
Thank you all. It's really great. I think this is a really important community of people in terms of shaping what we do next, and it's really important for us to think about the future of things like the CSIR scheme as well. So there's a lot to be done. It's really great to have so many of you on this morning at such an early hour, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's great. And thank you so much for coming on, David, and starting this day of webinars off with really interesting and informative information on the IR exams. So that's great. And thank you, everybody else, for attending today. And we look forward to seeing you on some of the other presentations throughout the day. Take care, everybody. Thanks.